Welcome back to Beyond Zenith, the podcast where we go beyond the title. I'm Nicola Moss, your co host, and today I'm joined by the wonderful Russell Long, CEO of Authentica Solutions. Russell, for our listeners today, could you give a quick intro of yourself and Authentica Solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me. And appreciate the many conversations we've had leading up to this point. So I'm excited to dive in
Likewise.
today. Um, yeah, background wise, the high level for me is I started as a teacher and a coach in the classroom in Texas, and then moved into administration, moved into, technology being infused into education in a time when it wasn't well received. It wasn't something you did every day, and it was the thing that you called somebody down the hallway to help you set up or dismantle when you were done. Right? It wasn't just infused. And then eventually, jump to the other side. Sometimes call it jumping to the dark side. Feeling like I could have a bigger impact by building solutions that I didn't see in education or would constantly hear about didn't exist and and then eventually led to where we are today with the company. And I know we'll dive into some of that background, but Authentica Solutions started in 2013. My co-founder and I, Gene Garcia, who's our CTO, we had worked together for a number of years at a large education company, Scantron, which most people just go to bubble sheets immediately. Global Scholar was the company evolving there, was the conglomeration of companies that a parent company was pushing together. And then we saw the needs there at scale, for solving interoperability, making it easier to move education data. And that was a passion of ours in the space. So from there, Authentica evolved in 2013. And then I know we'll dive into the insane story that has evolved since for the company. But yeah, leads us to
Thank you
today.
very Thank you so much. You've had a journey, and we're very keen to unpack it today and learn a lot from you. So, you've built six companies and you worked at Microsoft, sold businesses, bought one back from Google, and then started again. Looking back, what would you say the thread is that connects all those chapters?
Wow, that's hard to net out. First of all, a series of events from an entrepreneurial standpoint, right? You deal with what's in front of you. And so you have pathways to choose where you either choose to build something, forge a path, you jump on a path that already exists, and you can come in as, replace the first party player, or you can come in second or third and still do really well. Or you try to cut a path across everyone's existing path because you see a way to do it quite differently. I would love to sit here and tell you, oh, Gene and I sat down, we came up with a plan, and we of course we got acquired, a few times. And the reality of the story is that opportunities came up and they're insane, and we feel like those were opportunities that we should explore and dive into, and ultimately led to the company, the major product in the company, because the company, half the business ended up at Google, the other half at Microsoft, and there's a journey and a story there that could take an hour to tell. Um, but it's been we've been extremely fortunate. We've had amazing people on this journey with us across the company. Could talk about them forever, and that afforded us the opportunity to see our product go from nothing to something across 400 or so districts to, okay, now we're going to figure out how to tear this thing back to its parts and pieces and then create something or enrich something that already exists at Microsoft to make it better. And a lot of that's tied to the thread behind all of that are the people that got acquired in the process. Microsoft and Google, in most cases, you're not making enough money to make them interested in the acquisition because they can make money off of you, right? It's because you can help them accelerate other lines of business in a massive way. And that's not always the case, but everybody's aware of the ones where that wasn't the case. LinkedIn, go through the list. So and so it was a great experience to be there. I think it has taught us a lot. I think one of the biggest things for me, I was very fortunate to be there a year before COVID and then through COVID. And the fortunate side of that is I would have never had the opportunity, nor our team, to learn about ed tech across the globe. And so that is irreplaceable. And then, it's feeding us now as we try to figure out, and it can be a distraction, like, oh, we need to get to Australia because competition is much less than the US. And then we're like, no, let's get our foundations established here, then begin, poking at that beast. So anyway, it's been an amazing experience. Part of the story is out there. It's on our website. We have a few podcasts out there, and we're telling it when folks ask. It's interesting in industry, or when you run into folks at conferences, and they're like, "Wait, can you walk me through what happened here?" And we're like, "Yeah, but it's been a fun ride to this point. I think there's no guarantee of success the second time or third time around, whether you're building a net new business, or in our case trying to revive one that everyone thought was settled and done. And then everybody's like, oh, it's a nostalgic play on the brand. And no, it was very functional. We needed one of our customers to be able to pay us. And it was much easier if we used the old brand and tax ID than it was to, try to build a new startup with a new name. We talked about it a lot. So anyway, that has brought us to where we are today.
Thank you. And we'll unpack a bit more about Google and Microsoft, because I know a lot of people want to hear, and it's very, very interesting. But most people would build one company and stop. What keeps pulling you back into building again? And I don't know if that's linked between like the entrepreneurial genetic defect we speak about.
Yeah, we've talked about that. I jokingly call it the entrepreneurial genetic defect. I think there are so many people, and it doesn't all mean we're all destined for leadership or the deep dive architect on the engineering side, but there's so many people who see a problem, begin trying to solve a problem, dive into how to solve it, and then your toolkit, both the one that has experience behind it and the one you want to forge or know you can, right, feeds the solution you come up with. And to me, defining entrepreneurial genetic defect goes from, why do I need to make this a business every single time, to, can't I just come in and learn something new or hear about opportunities? And I think from there, you got to dive into your passions. Can I be passionate about this? Does anybody care? Does anybody really want to solve it? And are they willing to pay to solve it? Because you don't have a business that, give stuff away. It's not a business. It's, it's a nonprofit. So they do exist. They get quite big. But I think that every single, I think that, the funny anecdote you and I have talked about as well is, in your personal relationships. My wife and I established a long time. We're coming up on 31 years of marriage. We established a long time ago. There's a moment when she wants me to help her solve a problem, but most of the time, just listen, confirm, and be present. The entrepreneurial genetic defect would be like, oh, I've charted out how you can solve all these challenges that you have talked about last night. That some people don't want to hear that side of the challenge. So I think, for me, pulling back into the business, again, the opportunity presented itself. We knew we probably weren't Microsoft lifers, and a lot of folks are. And it's a great company. It's a real culture, and it has an amazing opportunity in it for those that are fortunate enough to become part of it. The entrepreneurial genetic defect would say, don't you want to leave the comfy? You're getting paid every week. You have great options. You have a lot of opportunity. You can have a massive impact. Or do you want to go back to where everything's at risk? Yeah, that sounds good. Let's go the path where everything's at risk. that's probably the best definition of the entrepreneurial genetic defect is, okay, can we make a bigger difference? The insanity side is, can we do this again? Can we get to the place where someone cares enough to acquire the business? Or is it possible that we can get big enough solving this problem that we actually start checking off interoperability across education? We can really capitalize on things like AI to make this problem a non-issue. And I know we'll dive into that more later, but that's where we are.
Well, congratulations on the 31 years.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, she has put up with a lot. it's been amazing, but we got married when we were both 8, so that's why we're still so young.
Yeah, you look great. Across the 6 companies, I imagine there was a lot of lessons. Was there any that you can think of that really took the longest to learn at all?
I think I consider myself a builder, so I want to get in and create. One of the biggest drives for me to come back to the business, at Microsoft, as great as it was, I was in a leadership role. The demands of the business are, in any leadership role, your number one responsibility is how do you make everyone else successful at what they're doing and love it, if you can combine those things together. And I felt like I in that role, it gets to the place where you don't have time to create. That is on your own, right? And I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs or a lot of folks that are driven, regardless of the role. An entrepreneur, by the way, by definition, I see this all the time. It does not mean you're going to be a C-level executive in your own business. You don't have to be. You can be the best damn product manager ever, and that's your business, and that's where you want to live. And if that's your passion, you should fight to keep it. You should not be pulled into a CEO role or business role or CRO role, right? Or marketing. You have to do what you need to do to make the business work, of course, within the guardrails. But I think overall for me, part of my reason for jumping back into was I wanted to build again. Can we solve these complex problems, and how far can we go? And when I get too far from that, when I'm not building something, then I find I begin to get drained. And so I have to have those moments where, the creative juices are flowing and you can just run. And I know it's a later question, but you're going to get this from me in droves around what the potential of AI is for your creators, for the people who execute, the people who dream. Now are no longer inhibited at all by needing someone else to be in that pot, to a certain extent. So that's who's going to own this space moving forward, I think. Those that are ready to build, not those that come with a talent pool of deep coding experience. So
That's a really interesting point, because I guess some people, when it's their own company, they feel that they need to be at the CEO, but it's interesting. It's like, no, do what you love and what you're best at and have the right people around you.
Yeah, 100%. When Gene Garcia is our CTO, I mentioned earlier, and an amazing guy. And we've done these casts. We've talked about building a company in the business and the exit and stuff in different ways. In a lot of ways, having done it by myself a few times, about 3 companies ago, I said I would never do that again. There needs to be at least one other person who is equally into this thing. Where I was heading on this story is when Gene transitioned, when we were transitioning into the Microsoft side of the house, he made a decision that we all thought he was both crazy and we were immediately jealous of. But his position was, I just want to be an IC again. I just want to be an individual contributor, and I want to build. And that's who he is at his core, right? And so then he came in, and he didn't have, eventually didn't have staff reporting into him. New people took over those roles, and then that's where he was focused inside Microsoft, the biggest potential engine, right, to achieve it. The jealousy side of that equation is there's a lot to be said about removing that responsibility of the people having to drive them. If that is not your passion, if that is not what you want to do or learn or expand into, there's no need to do it. I see plenty of people that try to be the CEO or the CRO, etc., but their passion isn't there for it. And so then the company suffers. And so the genius that you started with, maybe it's product, maybe it's service, whatever it is, then the company begins to fail because of that. There are structures you can put in place to make sure the founder's voice remains the prevailing voice. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to sit in that top seat to do it. And I'm always curious. I think, if you go look at the founders over at GoGuardian, and dropping a name there, but if you look at their story and their evolution and their investments and then their private equity and then how they sit, they were adamant that they didn't want those roles, right? They wanted to build. And so you can see it in so many different businesses. I think this is both my tongue-in-cheek bent in life. This is the pool that I have in life to be in this seat, in this role, constantly learning, screwing it up, fixing it, right? Making great decisions, making terrible decisions. And, outcomes determine all of that. And one day all that goes away. Like, you either have a great exit and people are like, oh, that must have been easy for you. And you're like, yeah, no. It's never easy the way it finishes, and then or you don't, and they're like, oh, you should have worked harder. And you're like, the level of work is the same. If you have those people working in your business that feel that way, they're the right hires. And if you don't, they're not.
What's the biggest mistake founders make when they're building a product?
I think that the biggest is trying to build something that you're not passionate about because you see financial gain. Right now, inside of our company, we've built this amazing product. Obviously, we all believe in it deeply. This product is multimodal, multifaceted, and is built as an intelligent engine where you can build applications and AI on top of it. So our product will do 1,000 things. The mistake I've made over the last couple of years is we've sold a lot of different ways that the product is beneficial. The reality is I need 3 things it does that I can sell 1,000 times. And then you can control your resources, your acceleration, and then from that point, stabilize the revenue and cash flow, and then the destiny becomes ours. We knew when we raised a seed round, we were not going to be what I call the raise babies, affectionately, let's just run for a year and get to Series A, Series B, Series C. I probably should have. There are moments where I'm like, well, we should just run the company that way and, tout the numbers. We like to run with 0 debt. In a lot of ways, investment feels like debt. Not because of our investors, they're amazing, just because there's an obligation that's outstanding that we need to deliver together, right, to the market. So my mindset is the best possible place we can be is a highly stabilized cash flow. Get to neutral, right, or get to the $1 plus, and then you're in a place now where you control the destiny, and now you can just talk about numbers and then decide, do you take investment or not?
If you could sit down with a first-time founder tomorrow, what's one piece of advice you'd give them?
I think it's important to understand the investment it's going to take. I do not, you read books, you read blogs, you read people who've been successful talk about you got to sacrifice everything if you want it to work. And to that I say, quite frankly, bullshit. You don't. You can define what you want out of life and then sort the business to do it. You still have to clean the bathrooms. If you have a facility, you still got to clean the bathrooms. But, you've got to do what's necessary in the business within the guidelines that keep you healthy and happy and pursuing the passion. It is not always fun. So I think the one thing I would say is, are you in a place as a founder, are you in a place to understand and define for yourself what it's going to take and what you're willing to give to make it happen? And that will constantly then be the foundation that they will refer to regardless of your decision to bootstrap, take on investment, etc. You know, a lot of VCs often use the phrase around, well, do you want to own 10% of a $100 million company, or do you want to own 90% of $1 million company? It depends. What's your foundation, and what did you decide you want out of life? And when we originally started building Authentica 1.0, we thought, if we can build this as a surviving lifestyle business where we can just grow over time and grow slowly and add staff slowly, bootstrap, on our progress, then any of the pathways remain open constantly. Like we're not dragged or beholden. When you're in the raise standpoint, unfortunately, we raised in 2024 and we thought we could hit the ground running fast. 2025 may be the worst financial year in education ever, if we really break it down, with several things, I think 6 specifically colliding together to make it that in the US. And so that factor has affected everyone, every business out there in the ed tech space working to make it better. And, so you want to accelerate, you want to move fast when you have investors. That debt pushes you to get out of it. And so you make decisions based upon the speed and your time to market. So I think I'll take 2 if I can. 2 things I would say: firmly establish what you want out of the life while you're building the business. That's your foundation. And the second is decide how fast you want to move and which one supports that foundation.
With the raising part, from my understanding, that was the first time that you raised. How did you find that experience?
It's interesting. This is probably a whole 30-minute segment because I would love to. It'd be great to combine with 2 or 3 others who have raised before compared to us. When we relaunched the business, Gene and I sat down and were like, okay, we're going to do like we did last time, just kind of bootstrap, live off the profits of the other sides of the business. The reacquisition from Google gave us a significant amount of revenue already in the business. It was highly profitable. The smart play would have been for us to reacquire the business, had the beautiful leadership and the 2 ladies leading that side of the business at the time, and just let them run it, take the profits as real profit, as real cash, and continue to work at Microsoft. Like, that would have been the smarter play. The genetic defect we talked about earlier was like, that doesn't make sense. Let's go build a $100 million company. Haven't done that before. Yeah, let's go do that. One of those things came to is like, why? Okay, we haven't raised before. What does that look like? And Gene and I had a lot of robust discussions, around doing this or not doing this. Because at first Gene was against raising any capital. Let's just let it run and then we can take our time, right? Relaunching the business, Gene and I joked too. It's like, oh yeah, we just renewed our vows. So now let's see what the run is. I think our thinking in raising, and I think the motivation behind doing it is a big driver here. Let's do this. If we come at this from a different perspective of having a company that runs for 5 or 8 or 10 years with the notion of, well, are we going to exit again? Because as soon as you make a VC a choice to raise, you are deciding there's a time frame at which you want to exit the business. There are a few, but education IPOs and education in the market itself are low performers. So you're going to work way the hell harder to get to that place. And so that was less attractive. So we're just thinking exit, right? And building a business like ours on the core model and infrastructure, solving interoperability, putting data into beautiful shape, opens us up for a lot of different pathways toward acquisition. So it made sense for us to get investment and see how fast we can move. Market had other things in mind during that time. But the raise itself was an interesting process. As academically, I dove in to figure out what's the right way to do this. And like everyone else, you read the books, you start watching YouTubes. I think we actually call them YouTubes. You start watching YouTube to learn as much as you can from other founders, what they did, how they did it. Everybody has a system. And I started executing on the system of, start with 100 VCs and then narrow it to 20 and get to 5. And I got to, I think, call number 2. And I'm like, I don't have time for this. I got to go sell stuff. Like, I got a company to run. Like, I don't have time. I don't have time, and I don't have other talent sitting here that can run the business while I'm off, running around with our budget, trying to get someone to latch onto it. So what I decided, this might sound cocky and it's unintentional, it's just direction. I'm going to choose the top 5 in education who actually know ed tech. And if those don't work out, we're not going to raise. And Gene and I are like, yep, that sounds like the right approach. So let's go. What made our approach on identifying these 5? Happy to have a separate conversation on how we got there, but it included their investment in ed tech overall, understanding the market and the variability, interest in global market and expansion. Could we just live with one investor, one partner for each round we want to raise? Is there interest in them for doing it as opposed to I'll go meet 20 more people and 30 more people and as you continue to expand? Quite honestly, it depends on the performance of your business every time. Every VC would love to continue to just own the full investment if all your numbers are perfect and Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny both show up every day to work. So, for me, it was interesting. It was academic. It was building in the sense of the, selling and figuring out where is the business going and how much growth can we sustain. And then you begin to get into fantasy land. I often refer to this as the MSU, the make shit up scenario. And that's what you're doing when you're guessing where you're going to be 5 years from now. But again, if Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny both show up, they're on the payroll, what you want to achieve in 5 years is perfect to get there. So we chose, our Al Ventures chose us. We chose each other, and then we brought them in for a seed round, significant valuation on the business for initial $6 million investment. And then we set off. That was summer of 2024. Things are good in the business. We're moving things forward, and they're happy. But Al has a lot of investment, so the downside of education is impactful to all of them.
Thank you for that. On to Microsoft and the Google story. So I know it's one of the most fascinating chapters of your journey. How did Microsoft first enter the picture?
Yep. So we have to go all the way back. So, we built a business. At the time, the business is made up of 2 distinct parts. One is an area, I've got about 20 plus years in the special education, or what we refer to as the exceptional learning space. Students that need some type of additional assistance to reach their maximum potential. And so part of when we were bootstrapped in Authentica 1.0 that started in 2013, we acquired an existing line of business from Global Scholar at the time, Scantron, Harlan Clark. They were shutting down Global Scholar, and we had a ton of products with a ton of people using them. And they're like, okay, we're going to shut this down. Just go tell the customers to move on to other products. And we're like, that doesn't work. A district the size of Clark County or Dallas or Houston or St. Louis, they're not going to be able to get an RFP out in 3 months, let alone move off of a product. So it was largely commercial thinking applied to the education space. Anyways, Gene and I decided to exit, build the business. I went back to them and was able to help them transition their special ed customers in a product line that everybody who was working for me at the time, for Gene and I at the time, already built this product. We already knew the product. That's not going to be a problem. So our thinking is, let us take all the customer base, support you while you transition, however long that takes. We'll benefit from the inbound cash and capital. We'll reinvest the profit, which was high, it was just sustainable. We weren't adding features to the product at the time. And then in 2015, we were able to work with Houston ISD, had reached out about us taking a product they had built for Medicaid, moving it from on-prem, literally server sitting underneath the admin assistant's desk, and rebuilding the entire solution inside of cloud, what is now legacy cloud, which is crazy because it was just a few years ago. And we have supported that product ever since. And then we built DataSense, and DataSense was interoperability, data exchange. We started direct sales. We moved to B2B sales. So other ed tech companies began using DataSense to support their business. One of those was a growing business called BrightBytes, which was an analytics provider inside of the space. And so they knocked on our door several times about, look, you guys are doing great. We see we can only grow and be successful if we combine, are you interested in selling? And at the time we were like, no, we just closed a massive deal with Houston. We're like, cash flow wise, we're good. Let's just continue to partner, support each other. And I can have a dedicated team to you. You can pay for that. And we're not in the way. And then eventually they came back with an offer that made Gene and I go, okay, we still have kids at home. So it's back to that foundation we established. They're going to graduate soon and go to college and then move out and off. And so, can we back off of 120 hours a week or 100 hours a week of working to spend more time? That's pretty attractive. What about our rest of our people? Is this a place where they get to advance their career? They have more opportunities. Their pay is good and solid. Can we increase it as a thank you? And so we eventually landed on a deal in an op. We decided this was a mistake. I think hindsight, mistake or not, is irrelevant. But I would do it differently today. But we decided not to go find an investment bank. We decided not to pitch the company to other, even announce that we were looking or considering it. There's pros and cons to that, but we closed really fast in exchange for not agreeing not to go do that. And ultimately, right after we did the announcement, that's when Microsoft essentially reached out and said, what the hell? Why didn't y'all call us when you were selling the business? And so we're like, I thought we were entrepreneurial, but clearly we're not. Like, we don't even know. So anyway, that began a journey that took about a year and a half. So, it happened. The conversation started right after the acquisition. I'd say we were pretty much settled on an op and a deal. And this was hard. This is a whole other session because you got a third-party company in the middle of this. It's their company now. They have a board. They had taken in over $50 million in investment. And so they have a big board. And there's a lot to navigate here. That was not a fun process, but a whole separate conversation. It should be a drama series, this whole process that evolved from that point to the point at which there was. I'll leave you with this little taster. There's a point at which the Microsoft team leaders are fully aware of, and then after the fact, my second day on the job in Microsoft, the senior leadership team pulls me and Gene into a room, and it's full of, there's like 4 attorneys and then the senior leadership team at Microsoft or the education team. And the conversation is, we know you weren't privy to everything, so we're going to open up and give you're the GM, you're the general manager of this transition. You need to understand everything that transpired. And I'm like, well, first of all, sitting in a room with 3 or 4 Microsoft attorneys, we didn't know what was up. Like, we thought, oh, here's your check. Thank you for day 2. You guys can leave. That is not the way things evolved. And we became really, aware of everything that happened. And in that moment, you have to decide, all right, am I going to be ticked? Am I going to be mad? Microsoft took care of us, all of us, really well. And we shared in that with the entire team. But my reason for evolving from your question, that story, is these things do not happen I'd venture never does all this happen without drama, right? And so a choice of, oh, well, that's interesting. Well, why don't we just sell data sets to Microsoft? Well, they're asking for it, so why wouldn't we? And at the end of the day, BrightBytes got a significant amount of money, free and clear cash from Microsoft for what they acquired from us. Microsoft took care of all of us as we went in, but it did leave the Medicaid and the special ed teams, which were my big concern for us. It left them because that didn't make sense at Microsoft. They asked us afterwards, should we go acquire those to get the rest of the team? And we couldn't make a strong enough case for Microsoft in the Medicaid business. That doesn't make any sense. And so that was one of the things. So when time goes through and then all of a sudden, Google comes in to acquire them and they call us, Gene and I, because what we didn't realize is Gene and I together were the third largest shareholders as part of our deal with them previously. We did a heavy cash deal plus ownership, and it's like it is now. It's all fake stock until something happens, until an event happens, it's made up. The IRS would like for you to pay for fake stock as much as possible. That's also a whole other conversation. But, once all of that transpired and then, all of a sudden your bucket of lessons is sitting there and you have this library of mistakes that were made and, the drama is fresh. That doesn't go away. And so then all of a sudden the seat changed and we're like, oh, well, we've been down this road before. So we know how to measure differently, I guess. The ruler has changed. We can both get the same ruler now as we have these conversations. But at the end of the day, we wanted them to be successful. We wanted the people there to have a journey to Google that we thought was like our journey to Microsoft. So we don't want to get in the way of all of that. But we did want fairness to exist in the process. And so that's drama too. That's like season 2 of our drama here. At the end of the day, we reacquired the brand, we reacquired Medicaid and the awesome team, and then about four months later, we reacquired the special education product, Phoenix, and the team. It was only 2 people running that product, but that SPED product anyway. There's a lot to say around that, but so the process overall, I guess, to come back and sum that up, and I've given you like the short version of the really long. I mean, we need to have like a bourbon and brew podcast to fully talk through all of that. But it landed us right where we should be today. It afforded us a lot of opportunities and capabilities. Some of the guests and the chances we took have paid off. And so, and then this crazy story has evolved. So, we're not sitting over here on our $1 trillion yachts. And that's what a lot of people hear, those big names. And we're good. We're appreciative for where we are. But ed tech typically doesn't end there. If you're not passionate about working in the technologies that you have in the education space, you shouldn't be here. And if you came from business into education and you're not passionate about what you're delivering to the space, I would say the same thing. Look at some of the biggest organizations with the deepest rounds of investment that now don't exist anymore. They just disappeared. And then you have, the acquisition lines. And so a lot of people benefit in that process, which is great. That's what we're all here to do. How can we have mutual success for everyone involved and solve some amazing challenges and problems, right, in the space?
What did it feel like? What was going through your head when you had Microsoft call you up and want to buy the technology that you and your team built?
I think, regardless of the pathway that everything happened from a notification standpoint, I remember Gene and I getting together, so we both are here in Georgia. And after we laid out what's really happening, we both just sat there sipping our coffee, going, probably not saying anything for 5 or 6 minutes. I think it was just a moment of, what's happening? When are we going to wake up?
Who wants
really?
us?
Why couldn't you just build what we built? You have, 150,000, 200,000 people over there.
Yeah.
Can you build it in 12 seconds? And we asked those questions eventually. I mean, during, one of the key dramatic moments, Microsoft requested that Gene and I fly up with no one else present before they would close the deal. This scared the hell out of a lot of people. We appreciated it. At the end of the day, Microsoft was adamant that, look, we land with you guys. Once this transaction's done, we're done with them. So we need to make sure what we're investing in is locked in. We're like, okay, well, we know the product. And they're like, no, we don't. We care, but we care less about the product than you guys and your team. That's what we're buying. So that's even harder to take in because you're like, what? Like, I know we have a lot of awesome people, but you can't find people like us in your Microsoft, on a global footprint standpoint. Wow. And so those are amazing moments to just sit and reflect. Imposter syndrome is immediate. They should have had one of the pieces of follow-up with the Microsoft team that did the onboarding for us was amazing. They were made up of financial and HR and acclimation and culture. Like, it was amazing. And I'm still connected with the two main leaders there today as they moved to other jobs and everything else. Just awesome people who love what they were doing. During the onboarding process, they were constantly reaching out. What could we have done differently? And then about every 3 months after that, they were like, what should we have done differently? What can we learn from? And I'm like, you should assign like an actual psychologist to the inbound teams to deal with imposter syndrome, to deal with this. So I don't know what percentage. I would guess 50, maybe 60% of our team didn't have a college degree. I've always hired for experience. I don't care what your piece of paper says. If you can't do the job at hand, it doesn't matter. And there's certain roles that they're exception there. I mean, data scientist, et cetera, et cetera. But I think for our team, it was one of the bigger things. Still today, I will talk to someone. I'm like, hey, I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile, and you have Microsoft listed there like you worked at McDonald's last week. Like, well, it wasn't me. I mean, you guys pulled us into that. That really wasn't. I'm like, you worked there for 5 years. I'm like, what? What do you mean? You were there because you had value. And maybe the door got open because of the work you did previously, by the way, mind you, that we pried open. Yeah. Okay. But after that, you should have been fired on the second day if you weren't worth your weight in gold. Were you? No. So there's an emotional piece to that I still across our team, because they're, a humble group too, that helps you figure out how to deal with it. So your question is a big one. Our initial response was disbelief and trying to figure out when the rabbit was going to actually come out of the hat and not have a head or something on it. And we would deal with that after the fact. But it was great. It was a good moment. It was a good moment for everyone. And there's a whole portion of the drama where, we could have this whole conversation, Nicola, between West Coast business thinking and East Coast business thinking, because that's what happened. West Coast company, San Francisco, collide with, Atlanta, East Coast. And we're like, we're in senior leadership roles and we're going through these meetings and we're like, what are we doing here? Like, we actually got to sell something, right? Like, we can't just sell custom everything. We're a product company, right? And so anyway, fun stories now.
And then years later, Google came knocking on your door. Can you give us a quick overview of what happened there?
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier, BrightBytes eventually gets themselves packaged up to be acquired by Google. So we have to work through, they've got to get Gene and I to sign off and everything. And so that's a whole process. But then after that, reacquiring the assets was largely, so the bulk of the revenue was on a renewal deal with Houston ISD.
Hmm.
So that established for us, there's a pre-established team. It was pretty much the same team, after 5 years, 4 years, which was beautiful. They were excited. The customer was super excited to have folks back who would focus on and know their world, as opposed to the analytics company kind of making sure Medicaid got supported.
Yeah.
It's just a different focus. So everyone was excited, and I had to make sure everyone was excited. I'm like, are y'all going to hand me something that Houston's canceling tomorrow? Because, I don't want to go through this process for that. And then one of the cool things, I'm like, I need the brand back, and I need our EIN from the federal government back, tax ID. And they're like, their attorneys, it was a great conversation because we were face to face. And they're like, why do you want those back? Like, we could have stuck debt on those. They could be tarnished. And it was just an interesting response. And I'm like, well, first of all, our agreement will cover that neither of those things exist when we close the deal. Secondly, in my head, the smoothest action was Authentica Solutions as a business still existed and was still in good standing with Houston. So for me, from an entrepreneurial genetic defect, I'm like, it'd be cool. It'd be cool if we don't ever miss a payment. Because typically what you would expect is, okay, reacquire. Now you got to reestablish the business. You got to go through risk management, go through finance at the school district. So you're going to basically pay out of pocket a few $100,000 a month for 3 or 4 months before you start getting paid back. It's largely a managed services deal. And we were fortunate enough that everything happened in a certain sequence where payment wasn't even missed. It just moved because it went back basically from company A back to company B. The board approved it. We continued to serve them. We didn't miss a bump. So that was exciting. And then figuring out, okay, do we just let this thing run, or do we dive in and try to solve another problem in the space? And then how would we do that? Oh, well, we've learned a hell of a lot at Microsoft. And Gene, being in the IC role, had time to play with the latest, what was coming, what was about to be out and released. And if you think about building a product 5 years ago compared to today, Claude, Anthropic, OpenAI, Copilot, those things were notions. They weren't things. And you go back 10 years, we're all like, you're building legacy cloud. So, anyway, so what the potential that we have ahead of us now is kind of ours to own, and doesn't mean it'll succeed, but we're going to give it our damnedest.
And on to Authentica Solutions. So for people hearing about Authentica Solutions for the first time, what problem are you trying to solve?
From a sales standpoint, I'm going to hit this on 2 fronts. The biggest problem we set out to solve and are solving today is direct to K-12 and direct to higher education is still one that's being solved in 1,000 fragments today. And the number one is, let's unify this data for the purposes of education and learning intelligence. How do we serve educators better? How do we serve parents better? How do we serve students better? And so the key problem is still, there's a lot of enterprise systems. So in K-12, you can expect 20 to 60 enterprise products running behind the scenes, half or 3/4 of which an educator will never log into. That stores critical information about the success of a student, right? Or themselves. What's my PD track look like? And then there's another, and the numbers just increased, 400 to 2,000 web apps that they have purchased. And then there's apps teachers are using, possibly with a FERPA violation or two, that are free from a groundswell standpoint for them to use to better manage their class, or a free math app, etc. That's an unknown number. So, our large districts estimate 500 to 1,000 what they call rogue solutions, because they're free to teachers. They start entering as soon as they add a student name, there's a violation, right? So then there's securities attacked in space, and there's that whole conversation. So the problem we want to solve is, let's solve interoperability and data exchange between all these systems. That's easy. That'll be a commodity 18 months from now that AI just does on a whim. I promise you. And so we are not building the company to be another ETL solution. But that data has to come and sit in the best possible shape. For us, it's about unifying it into a data lake, a lake house, which essentially has the greatest opportunity to never need to be replaced, but just expand. And so you look at the fractional aspects of K-12 and higher ed especially, they invest in data warehousing. Then they come back and invest in new data warehousing. Then they invest in new analytics. And these are projects which cost millions of dollars. By the time they're done, they're in the same place they were in with the previous one just 5 years later. So the problem we want to solve is this should be immediate. Start solving your interoperability a little bit over time. Don't try to do a $2 billion project to convert everything in 10 minutes, right? So we built a solution that helps you realize this level of intelligence and then gives you the platform to securely analyze all of your PII. So that has to happen. Then there's, okay, choose your AI pathways that you want to take. And we have built the full interoperability suite so that you can rely on the intelligence that exists here, that has formed, and attach your chosen AI, use our AI. We're building AI on top of this intelligence layer in gaps in the market that we see are out there right now. One is SPED. And then we have, light applications that we can build within 48 hours to POC and have production ready launchable within 7 to 14 days. Now, that's not a hope. That's quality core dev code. So the notion to me is that we are evolving an app dev console or AI dev console on top of this intelligence layer. So a district, a higher ed institution can begin to determine how they want to solve these problems and use the data for their purposes. They know their business way better than we do. Certainly should. And then, we also now have the conundrum of analytics or AI. Well, it's not either or, it's both. We see the market merging where those two things need to coexist in the same space. I don't need an empty prompt engine. I need a driven prompt engine that's backed by the analytics I see that drive my line of business. Philosophically, that's where our head is wrapped around. So we want to make this growth-based. We want to make this inexpensive to build and grow. And we want to make sure everything that is being built, it comes with full education context, which we have built into our modeling. If you were a CTO and you asked me that same question, I would say, we're your back-end infrastructure. We're your entire education cloud service that you can solve, that you can purchase to solve that problem. If you're academic, we're going to give you access to data that you can believe in, so you can just focus on if the AI is right and if the analytics are right. Not maybe the data is wrong. Maybe it's the wrong data. And we're still living in an age where the majority of our integrations, by the way, are CSVs. APIs, and I don't mind putting this out there, and I'd welcome anyone to challenge this, and this doesn't mean holistically in every single company, but the APIs that are being built out there right now are horrible. And they're partial. And you have the majority of your SIS companies still don't have an aligned policy where any feature added must have an API component for activation, or the data that it's generating can be used. So, okay, if a district needs that for their analytics, where do they go? Drop a CSV, drop a CSV, drop a CSV. Enter AI from an ETL and interoperability standpoint, the way that we're putting it to work. And great. Give it all to us at the same exact time. It'll be consumed and managed and secured and now ready for you to take action on. And the support side of this scenario is you can't just move the data, fashion it, let it sit, marinate, provide it, beautiful analytics and AI. You have to maintain it. So we have built that into the model. How do you make sure you stay healthy? Because your SIS is going to blip. I don't know. We see often SIS crashes, LMS crashes, core systems down. We see across the industry right now the data breaches. that'll increase. And that's largely AI being able to penetrate and understand legacy cloud build and the holes and gaps that exist. That's going to get way worse. And so I think we're at a moment where education is going to have to either all of a sudden move fast, or the headings we're going to see every day in the news is another one got attacked, another one, another one, another one, another one. So companies are coming in to solve this in different ways. Your big companies who don't understand education are trying to say, you should throw, $5 million at this problem. And we're saying, no, you shouldn't. You were owed and due solving that with $50,000 investment, not a $5 million investment.
Would this be correct in saying, so it gives you one single source of the truth for your data, then it enables you to then use some analytics from that data, so it helps customers, users be able to pull the right information, so then they can then make data-driven decisions, and then it keeps on feeding, and then it helps you to maintain. So it's like a full life cycle of your data.
1,000%. Beautifully said. I think that you can tell we're passionate about everything it does. And it does 1,000 things to make this look simple, to your point.
Yep.
But you're exactly right. And then there's the time and efficiency and savings side, which is we deliver as part of this process.
Mm-hmm.
Your people can do more with less and have better quality than they had before.
Yep.
Districts now should be able to, districts in higher ed should not be beholden to any tech company for the questions and the answers they deserve.
Mm-hmm.
They've already paid for it. And if they're not getting the answers they need, then they should feel good about moving to another product.
Yeah.
The other thing that becomes very real in the world is we have an amazing school district now. Don't have permission to share their information, but they're tiny. I mean, they're little, but we're currently migrating 18 of their systems all into Seed as the central repository.
Mm-hmm.
One of the key things they need is they want to run a different LMS at the elementary level than they run at the high school level. Your data is no longer the reason you would only choose one, because it's so painful to move and migrate. Training aside, let's leave you with that problem. Great. Let's take the other ones off the table. So yeah, to your point, I mean, we see ourselves as this cloud service that you would call, but not dissimilar than what you might find in GCP or Azure or AWS. It's just that it's education centric, and we've spent the time, energy, and money to put the right assets together instead of you having to build it. We also sell into the channel space. So our channel partners like SHI and CDW and Carasoft, they offer our solutions to the market. And we also do sell into, on the B2B side. So other ed tech companies that need this data integration problem solved. We're less focused on that today because the needs are so tremendous. The pendulum has swung since we were at Microsoft, right? When we went to Microsoft, it was all about empowering ed tech, which, there are competitive companies out there that are doing that majority today. And then we see that the pendulum has swung back, where education is saying, I need to take back my own control, and I need systems to understand this is my data. And so the only adjustment I would make to what you said is I'd say we're the unified system of record. Your SIS still remains system of record for the data it holds, your LMS for the learning experience and the data it holds. We unify that. So the unification of that is what we say is the intelligence layer that's missing entirely today.
Is there a particular time, a K-12 higher ed should be bringing in what you can do at all?
Yeah, yesterday, 6 weeks ago, like 6 months ago. There are budgetary motions drive more of, decision-making process in education than it should. Mm-hmm. We've encountered districts that when we finally get to the right people and we have a chance to have a real partnership conversation, and this is a whole other, we should do a series. We could bring a few CEOs and CROs together on this one, I think. And you'd be great to facilitate a conversation around districts are out there largely saying, we want partners. We want partners. And then all of us trying to knock on that door or get a hand in the face. Talk to the hand, figure out, go fight to get to the table so you can be a partner, right?
Yeah.
My notion, once we have several of these, but once we get in front of the right people and they see what we've created and see our amazing team, we're made up of a lot of educators. So you want to sit down and have a conversation about solving a technical problem, but you're tied to evaluation versus assessment core data, and you need standards communication happening with your grades as they pass. That's a different conversation that we have than I don't know what any of that is, but we can move all your data from point A to point B. You just have to tell us exactly what you want. Best time of year is when, and I'm not kidding, like every integration you run, if you're implementing a new system inside of K-12 or higher ed, especially one of the enterprise systems, it's a beautiful time to say, we're going to go ahead and make this change now, and then we'll migrate the rest of them over time. I'll ask you, you interact with universities globally and other ed tech companies. Have you encountered one yet that if you said, tell me about your analytics game, your AI game, is it perfect? Is it solved? You've been doing this for 40 years. Isn't it fixed? And their response is, I have yet to ever, with that question, not have a head drop going, oh my gosh, I don't know why we can't solve this.
Yeah.
But it's time, it's expensive, we still haven't solved it. And it's a hard problem.
Not as sexy.
But we've tried to, we built our solution so that you may have a problem that just needs a $2,000 a year solution. And that's how this name of the product's called Authentica Seed. And, as we were talking strategy early on and building the solution, we kept saying seeding strategy. We're going to seed it here and let's make this inexpensive. Let's keep costs down and let's just call it seed. And it has a whole lot of play, pros and cons to it across the market. In the ecosystem and with people, but at the end of the day, it's you may only need the $2,000. We have districts using us for the $2,000, $5,000 a year problem. Then we have districts using us for the 200,000 or departments of education into the millions to solve big data issues. Well, it's the same platform, and we built it so that tracking expense, knowing what you spend, what you can estimate, what you think is going to happen, is all present. We also have a couple of notions. We have a new product coming to market that we're co-building with a few school districts on the K-12 side. It's called reachAI, and we're initially just focusing in on the academic success side of special ed. And this will evolve tremendously. And we're pumped about what we're building, but the capabilities are utilizing the intelligence layer, which now exists. And I've been wanting to offer a new way to look at SPED and exceptional learning across the space, and have held back from releasing a product that's like all the others. It's a very aged space. Most of the products out there today are 20 years old. Yeah. I jokingly talk about lipstick on a pig on top of an old platform. Then I'm like, well, there's like Neiman Marcus lipstick, and then there's like, the grocery store on the corner lipstick, and it varies, but at the end of the day, it produces a legal document.
Yeah.
But the systems we see in the market have a lot of opportunity to offer way more to help these educators and parents and students be more successful. And it's not a commoditized approach. So education has evolved and is constantly evolving. But anyway, we're excited because, we can integrate with your IEP system and your SIS system and your LMS system and all of your assessment systems, your behavior system, your HR system, and there's simple things we can all do. And I don't mind sharing. Companies should be doing it, but we're building a product that can be assistive. So we can attach to any IEP platform, and they can get the benefits of the latest technology that's available. That's approach one. and then we will evolve as the market pulls us there. But that solution for us to build, get it to market, get to alpha and beta and test is now a few weeks, months. If you want to build a new IEP system, we would have in the past been looking at 18 months to alpha, right? And because we're building it on top of seed, we save about a year of dev. Even with AI present, you have a lot of security, talking HIPAA compliancy, full FERPA is not an option ever. And then how we evolve the market. So anyway, I sorry for that, but excited about where we're heading and proving out the capabilities that we've been so passionate about in the space.
I mean, it sounds brilliant, and everyone's saying data is the new oil, and you can't do anything with AI without the right data. So it seems like a perfect time for
Get it
what
right.
you
Yeah,
think.
yeah. Be confident. Solve one problem at a time. If you're still trying to solve, is this the right data? And sometimes we don't want to face the truth. I mean, having previously deployed analytics and predictive analytics in the space, sometimes you're having a conversation about, oh, your data's wrong. Why is that? Because those numbers are way worse than what I thought they were. Sometimes you never had the right information. So now you at least know where the baseline is, and you can change it from here. We also have interesting things in the industry that we can help drive. We have a product called UsageIQ, which is one of these I was initially not excited about, and I'm overjoyed now. But my team's like, listen, people are asking, they just want to know how can I review how much I'm spending compared to the usage. And then the third question, which is at the tip of your tongue, impact. Do I know efficacy? Is it really making a difference? Is next. Not an easy question to answer because of how multifaceted higher ed and K-12 is. So this product is quite simple. It helps a district in about 5 minutes have enough data to analyze, is my usage, where's my opportunities to do more with that product? So we're getting requests to expand it. Hey, can you help me understand my Canvas usage? Can you help me understand Google? Can you help me understand Azure? So we're trying to decide. One of the interesting ones is screen time across the U.S. Can you help me understand how much time my K-4 kids are spending on the screen? Because there are state policies and district policies passing now that maybe all of EdTech should be pulled from K2, K4, K6. And the reality is we don't have enough research to tell us that technology has or has not had an impact, mainly because we can't go back 100 years and figure out how they were learning then. So it's a very emotionally charged solution, but we're pulling together educators now, chief academic and CTOs, to determine what would give you the answers you need, and then can determine, is that something we want to build?
And over the next year, I know you've given us a few exclusives. What's next for Authentica Solutions?
Yeah, we're from a business. I'll answer this in two ways. From a business standpoint, my goals for the business are to be cash neutral, be positive cash flow, and then finish the year on our targeted growth. And we're targeting to be north of 100% in growth year over year, 114.7%. But again, MSU. So we made these numbers up in the budget, taking into account where fiscal 25 landed. You think about 26, you think about 27. So because we focused this on entrepreneurialism initially, I'd say from a business standpoint, that's okay. And then from there, we can decide, okay, if we achieve those goals, that puts us in a great position to say, we're going to keep going, keep growing a little bit slower, but keep going. Or we can raise a Series A. What does that mean for the business if we go down that road? And then we've got people knocking about acquisition and interest in having a conversation. And most of those are early. They're way too early for us. We've had the bargain basement buyers who are just looking for a company that's struggling to exit, right? And then we've had some surprising calls. Hey, do you want to talk about an opportunity? Yeah, you're pretty interesting. Let's have that conversation. And so they're interesting right now for us. And you're constantly always listening. If our story tells you nothing else, then I think it's about why not listen? I mean, and then why not ask? Because if you're not asking, you've told yourself no. Part of this quote behind me is the core of that adage. But anyway, so I think, for us on the business, on the academic side, we would love to, we're focusing in on the three things that we believe we can sell 1,000 times. Mm-hmm. And so we are constantly looking for amazing school districts, for partners on the B2B side, for higher education institutions, or even colleges or schools within higher ed that are looking to make a significant impact or change their trajectory. There's the way things have always been, and there's the process that's run to date. If that's worked for you and you're in a genius place, you should keep running. You shouldn't change anything. Mm-hmm. But if we have an opportunity to find where we can be a part of that journey, then that's what we're focused on for this year. And it's a significant amount of growth for us. We're trying to, the majority of our focus is on product subscription, ARR over services. But there are so many opportunities on the services side that it's hard not to help them be successful with the products they're purchasing, and achieve their goals. We're also looking at more of we recently closed and made an announcement recently with the Nevada Department of Education. And we have built our solution to be enterprise class and run an entire organization that has 1,000, 2,000 districts, or help a Department of Ed revamp or rethink how data is exchanged entirely, holistically. Product wise, tons of innovation. We got to box it up. We have enough features now to sell. And then we have our list of 1,000 things that we want tomorrow to make it that much better and richer. So it's a constant balance between what we're building ahead and getting too far ahead, mm-hmm. Compared to our ability to sell. And then, sales organization wise, we're revamping how we think about the market pretty significantly. So that's the next 10 minutes and the next year ahead of us.
Before we wrap up, I wanted to see if we could do a quick fire round. So I'm going to ask you questions, and the aim is just answer what comes to your mind, and then
the only part anyone should listen to, basically. Okay.
No.
Let's do it.
So everybody's talking about AI. What excites you most right now?
So I'm calling it my new operating system, but we've narrowed down, and as a company, we're focusing on Claude. The other ones are great. We need to focus. So what's most exciting for me from an entrepreneurial standpoint is taking command and control of the entire operations. Everything we have can now be unified and connected through a few MCPs. The business side data is a hell of a lot simpler than figuring out how to make humans better. You know what I'm saying? So my first hour of every day is spending time catching up on everything I have designed, engineered, and have running to understand the business and where we are today and what's happening in the business. The other thing is Gene has built an autonomous agentic DevOps engineer, affectionately called Edwin, that runs in a VM environment and is solving more and more and more of our bugs or issues. We don't have a ton, but and is now creating and introducing features for review and consideration on the QA side. So we've got a new feature. It gets written up.
Very cool.
It's a half write-up. Goes to Edwin. Edwin comes back with a plan. Our product managers look at it, go, man, 50% was what I asked for. The other 50% is awesome. Go do that. And then show me what you got. We're trying to do the same thing right now from CFO standpoint, we have a bot. We have a sales ops bot, our agent that we have created, Aria, which is saving us a ton of time and opens up a lot of interesting doors for us to be able to do more advertising, front of market, lead gen, et cetera, that we're poking at a little bit. So
Very cool.
that's the business side of the equation. Then there's what it means to, revenue generating in our customers, which would be like 2 hours of fun conversation.
What concerns you most within the AI space right now?
Delays and assumptions. I see a lot of indecision, both on the business side and in academia, because there's this fantasy land. I think this is the right use. There's a fantasy land notion that I'll just wait a little bit. AI is going to solve this problem better than ever. Well, guess what? Somebody's got to build AI to solve that problem. It's not just going to do it one day miraculously. And then, of course, you look at Fable that just got released by Claude, and you're like, oh, well, I can do everything. I don't know why you called it Fable, but, doesn't even quite tell us to run and trust it. But anyway, so it's an interesting space that we're in. It's a great question.
Next one, best leadership advice you've ever received.
Okay, I'm going to answer this one because you said business, and this is about entrepreneurship. So I'll answer it from that perspective. Never stop selling. Doesn't matter if you're a builder. Doesn't matter if you're a handshaker. Doesn't matter if you're a cigar smoker. It doesn't matter. You have to constantly be selling solutions and product that in turn generate. So as caught up as you want to get or be, and as much as I would love just to build stuff that someone else has the full responsibility to run to market, your strategy and the reason you exist is all tied to that.
Yeah.
And I get a little, the conversation, are you a product-centric company or are you a sales-centric company? You're like, who's pulling the company? And you're like, yes. You don't have a product, you don't have anything to sell, but if you're not selling, you have no reason to build a product. So we're a revenue-focused company. So, and everything's connected. So
most underrated trait in a founder.
Determination. I mean, there's an answer out there that people, I think, misuse a lot, but there are a lot of people who use it really well, and it's grit.
Yeah, I was going to say grit. You always hear people say that, but it's kind of similar to what you're saying, right?
It is. I was trying to think of a different word other than grit, because, grit is core to our culture here too.
Yeah.
Grit is not, however, aggression, walking over other people, doing whatever it takes, without thinking of the humans involved. It is, I will find a way to solve the problem, whatever that is, and driving to do it.
Thank you. Next question, biggest lesson from Microsoft you learned, if you had to choose one.
I had to choose one. Take your vision over job security. Make sure you're driving vision, regardless if you're going to have to fight, or our concern about keeping a job to do the right thing should not override doing the next right thing. We can all have opinions about what the right thing is.
Yeah.
But I'd say at Microsoft, I learned that in droves, both positively and negatively, seeing it happen. You have that many people, you're going to have all sorts of personalities, at play. But that's one that is very seated for me, both positive and the negative side.
Then is there a biggest lesson from failure?
Yeah, aside from never stop selling. I mean, I've had 2 companies that ultimately I needed to shut down. I ended up selling all the assets of the second one, fortunately. So, I got to break even, but break even for an entrepreneur is failure. Great. I put $1 million in, I got $1 million out. I still failed. I didn't do anything else with it, but I'd say that's a big driver, and largely because I started building all these products where I saw a market, sold it one time to a school district, and then spent way too much time making it great.
Yeah.
I was the only person selling. That's a problem, right? So I'll stick with that one. This is rapid fire.
How
I'm answering long-winded. Yeah.
how do you think AI will reshape education in the next couple of years?
I think if we can keep the confusion down and remain focused on what it does and will do as opposed to what it won't do, it will not replace educators and administrators
Hmm.
ever. I see models and people building or trying to build models to that end. And if we think a machine can differentiate instruction better than a human, we're losing our mind. In a society, if we think we've identified one, even if success of that student begins getting higher grades and scores, you're still going to lose because you have a non-human. Right now in our company, we're starting to name these agents. We're interacting with these people like real people now. And then what begins to happen? We dehumanize. So anyway, we joke about it a lot. And I do say things to my, super intelligent, sometimes pain in the ass agents who make stupid comments all the time that I would never say to another human. I'll be the first to admit it. But I think the humanization of AI has to be front and center, especially in learning.
What's an opportunity in education that people are completely underestimating or missing?
I think the survivability of the data we have, the intelligence. So there's the transportability or mobility of information. A student leaves one district, goes to another, and essentially with minus what the parent walks in with in her hands or his hands, with their student. Oftentimes all that history is lost. So, we've built an ecosystem where that data can survive and pass from district to district. Somebody has to pay for that because, we don't have $1 billion in grants just to make it happen. And so we're even like, okay, well, do we go the B2C route where a student is eligible to download and have essentially a personal learning cloud that stays with them. Here's my application to a university, right? Is my history that now has evolved. Cool. My learning profile and stats, how I learned and understanding that at a deeper level, where I've improved. We have all these, we have our Fitbits and our Apple Watches and everything else for our health and our tracking. There's the mental health side, there's the intelligence side, there's experiential progress side. And so I think the miss is it's a hard problem to solve ish. And no one can quite figure out the monetization of the survivability of the data, the portability. I think everyone would agree it's needed. But how do you do it? So we built infrastructure that supports it. So, we've got plenty of other things to sell before we try to solve that problem. But if someone knocks on our door and says, hey, we're the whole state of Kentucky, KDE, and we want all this data to survive and thrive, we then are going to pay you to give that data in 1 year of service to every one of my kids who move between our districts, move out of our districts, or graduate. Great. Let's now we can figure out those other steps.
Yep. State of Kentucky, please reach out to Russell Long.
Right. I just chose them. They're close. I'm going to the Bourbon Trail in a few months.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Please reach out to him. You can link up there. One book everyone should read.
If I can only choose one, I would choose probably A Servant Leader, Servant Leadership in Action. So Blanchard has, the shorter version of that, which is great. And then Robert Greenleaf originated this phrase, but in the 70s, you apply that to business and it begins to change your perspective if you can deliver on it. The notion of what rolls downhill should be that the bottom of the hill should be the highest person in the organization. It inverts that pyramid. There's a lot of good. There's servant leadership in action. Simon Sinek has, leaders eat last, which has the notions of servant leadership built into it. But I would say go grab a book where servant leadership is the key and live there. Blanchards are great because it's like it's a short plane ride. And then you can just process, So yeah, I would leave it at that.
What's a belief you hold about business that most people would disagree with?
I'd say one is you can build an amazing community. I don't believe you build a business to be a family. Family brings with it a lot of, I can get myself in trouble.
Problems? Or not?
Yeah, I mean,
It's just a bit.
there's a love inside a friendship in a business, which we have here in droves, right? Create this beautiful professional organization. At the end of the day, if you're making decisions on someone's emotional state and feelings as opposed to what's best for the business, you will fail.
Hmm.
That does not mean what most people will try to make it mean, right? Which is everybody should just do their job and go home, never talk, never share community, never share
Yeah.
about their personal lives. It doesn't happen. Small businesses, that naturally happens. I just think
Hmm.
the notion of family, or at least my definition of it, is one that has a lot more elasticity than business can withstand. Make sense? So,
Yeah.
um, and I think it's same thing. I have made the mistake and I have made the genius decision of hiring family or friends to do jobs. It is one of the most painful and one of the most rewarding things I've done. So I have my other executives on staff where I'm like, do not let me hire another family or friend to work for the business. Because, those things begin to merge, they cross over. You have conflict, you have a whole new realm of political nuance that doesn't belong in a business, right? So, and everybody's a little bit different, but I'd say that'd be it.
Yeah, I had Hussein on the podcast, and he actually said, "Don't hire your friends or family."
Okay, yeah, I think I remember.
Yeah.
It's a
If you
challenge. It's
could,
a lesson you learn the hard way in most cases.
but you do end up making friends from your business, which I find is interesting. But I understand what you mean. Yeah, maybe not all the time. You got to have business
Yeah.
decisions where sometimes emotional or other stuff have to get put to the side because you've got to go and deliver the mission.
Yeah,
So,
surrounding people with love and compassion. You experience deaths of pets and parents, and you live
yeah.
through all those things, and it's not an unfriendly environment. Um, you're there for each other, and when you spend this much time, especially in the startup, you build deep relationships
Yeah.
fast. What I found interesting in our transitions and sales, and we talk about this story we've been able to be a part of.
Hmm.
You realize, oh, those people I haven't talked to in 4 years. Whereas right now I'm talking to them, 8 times a day.
Yeah.
And so those transitions happening. But, it's akin to, well, when I moved from elementary to middle school, my friends changed. When I moved from middle school to high school, they changed again, higher ed,
Yeah.
or vocation or jobs. And, we had the opportunity to come back and do this again and had so many people reach out, which makes you feel good as a leader because either they see the benefit and the upside of it enough to put up with you, or they actually had some sense of fun in the process and, learned and were able to live in it, which is great. And I think that's a stronger message than any I could say about the company and the people that's here. And so my number one
Nice.
goal is to keep the best, smartest, and kindest people around me, so everybody else just has to put up with me. And then there's tough decisions. The fiscal 25 was a challenging year.
Hmm.
When you're looking at the business and you're thinking about the future of the business, you have to make adjustments. And sometimes you overhire. And so,
Yep.
when you bring on investment, you get super excited. You bring in a Series A, you get super excited. And you do your damnedest to make sure that the growth far exceeds the plan.
Hmm.
And when those things don't come to fruition, then you're in a place to say, am I going to fire my family? Do I need to riff my family? So again, there are amazing people here that we have exited the business that we still consider mutually friends. And those tough decisions need to be made. Would they work for us again in the future, another company, or here later? Possibly. I'd love to think that all of them, would. And then, just one more anecdotal to your AI conversation earlier, or question. We've had folks here that became very evident they were not going to adapt from genius level architectural engineering kind of legacy thinking to AI driven thinking. You no longer have 3 months, 6 months, 9 months to help them get there. You're just paying a hell of a lot of money out the door. And I oftentimes, my tongue-in-cheek version is like when I would trying to get my grandmother to move from VHS to DVD, and now I'll try to sell them on the notion of just paying, fee for Netflix. Yeah, it's the same. It's like, it's a fad. I'll get there eventually. AI is not forgiving. You do not have time to adapt. And that's one of my biggest fears for those graduating right now out of college is they were berated in K-12 and again in higher ed how evil AI is, and you shouldn't use it to do anything. And industry sitting there going, if you don't have any AI experience coming out of college, I'm not sure why I would hire you.
Yeah.
And so we have a generation right now that I'm extremely worried about. And so are all the parents. So it's like recently our friend group got together and like, hey, can you lead a session to get them down the road of how should they think about using AI in their respective industries? Because they're getting these traditional degrees. And, I would ask you, you interact in the higher ed space so much. It's like, is there anything traditional in the business world now? Oh, I'm a project manager. I've got 4-year degree. I've got all the certifications.
Yeah.
What can you do with AI so that you're now a PM? I expect to have the power of 30 people. Well, I can learn fast. You better, like right now. So, anyway.
If you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
The first thing that popped in my head was have more fun. Take yourself or the situation too seriously. There's always a solution sitting there. And I think that it just directly related to that is just celebrate more. I think personally, I would say, I think my kids and my awesome wife, my kids are also awesome, would say that I managed it well. I would like to think that. I don't know that we've sat down and had that beer conversation lately from my level of involvement. So, they're more important to me than this business.
Yep.
And I think everyone here knows that. And I hope they treat it the same way. And then I have people who apologize 1,000 times because they've got to take off to take their kid to, a doctor's appointment. You're like, why are you apologizing?
Yeah.
It's more important. Yeah, but I've got these 8 things, these 12 meetings. Yep. Always have a backup. Who's your second person is going to get on all those calls, or you need me to get on those calls. So, and those are more challenging with a smaller team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last question. What is next for Russell Long?
Kentucky Department of Ed calling.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, that's right. I think, I am in a mode where I'd say the last 4 or 5 months have been a bit of a, learn to survive, adapt, stabilize, figure out this crazy market and where do we focus. I think we're getting to the middle or other side of that. And so finding answers is always a blast, and oftentimes we get 100 things that the answer is no, not there. And we're still trying to find the 2 or 3 that are yes that way, right?
Hmm.
But I find in life most often you can spend so much time doing that, and at the end of the day, execution is always going to win. So find the one thing and run it to ground. My hope is that the team is so empowered across our organization that everyone is constantly selling and they're confident in doing it. So
Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on to hear all your lessons and journey.
thank you. I appreciate it.